Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about the Minneapolis, Minnesota shooting that took place early Sunday morning on June 21st, 2020. And well, what a way to begin this summer period and the solar eclipse. It's terrible. I'm not shocked that we're having, it's starting out with a really with a really something really majorly negative, and it's terrible that this is happening. And somebody, I saw another astrologer had something on his page stating something about, well, that he may not even see a lot of the people that he knows now next year. And the way things are going with this pandemic right now and these shootings, just we really don't know anymore. But anyway, my heart goes out to the family of the one. I believe that one person had died. There were 11 that were shot, but there's one, to best of my knowledge as of right now, that died due to the shooting. And the thing about this is, I'm going to talk about some placements, the chart of the event chart of the shooting, and see what it, looking at some things that may have manifested in this tragic shooting. And one thing that stood out to me when I'm looking at this, okay, you have in the rising sign, the face of the event, you could say, is Pisces. Of course, the sun at the time actually was very early entering Cancer. You had the moon in Gemini, 29 degrees. I see the 29 degrees in astrology as the full culmination of that zodiac sign. You're talking about very powerful, high strung, very excitable emotional energy. And the thing about it is, when you look at 29 degrees in astrology, it's a crisis degree. It's obviously, this was something that where crisis did occur. And you also had the North Node at 29 degrees Gemini, very close proximity to the 29 degrees Moon in Gemini. And you have a lot of that very powerful, restless energy at that 29th degree. 29 degrees in astrology can also reflect at times some issues that haven't been reconciled or resolved. And you're talking about being in Gemini. Maybe it's you're talking about the moon in Gemini, maybe something with people they feel close to home with, that are neighbors, that could be or could just simply be at home communications. It might be something that could be related to Gemini. Being in Gemini, it's something, to me, likely something over some issues due to maybe some lack of communication over something, or an issue that needed to be resolved through communication. And the sad thing about this, you have this moon in Gemini making a square aspect to the Mars in Pisces. And when you have Mars square the moon, sometimes this could manifest in really about taking actions where you don't really care who you might hurt emotionally. And you're talking about the moon and being very an emotionally versatile Gemini and very detached sign. Then you have the Mars in Pisces, where you're talking about very senseless actions, and also actions where sometimes when people, Mars in Pisces, I think, can sometimes manifest in anger that's not just confounding, but is senseless, or anger that's unfounded at times, where the anger that's unleashed is just not over something that's really something that's completely not justified, because it can be senseless and unrealistic. It's angry over things where really maybe sometimes you don't need to be necessarily that angry, being super sensitive over some issue that you didn't really have to didn't have to be. And it comes out in the form of some kind of anger or acrimonious energy. The fact that you have the Neptune and the Mars in Pisces, the conjunction falls in the first house. No shocker, they're in this event chart. Now, the thing about that is is that when you're talking about Mars conjunct Neptune, that by itself can sometimes manifest in some anger over some oppression or victimization, and issues with isolation, confinement, and when I look at this, sadly, there's a lot of, and you're having a lot of that going on. It could be over some issues connected with prejudice as well, persecution issues, and the fact that it's in Pisces obviously can reinforce that energy and the anger that. And it's coming out in a very and really that might be confounding and confusing to others, which is just might simply be senseless. The um, fact that it is in Pisces. Now, another thing, of course, at the time of this shooting, of course, Mercury is retrograde in Cancer. When you have Mercury in Cancer, regardless of it being direct or retrograde, might be ruminating or lamenting over past hurts. The fact is, when you have it in retrograde, it's more introspective, and it's more thinking about it and not actually communicating maybe these issues. Now, Uranus is in the second house in the event chart, and that could, of course, manifest in unusual values. And really, another thing in this, and again, I based the time on a CNN blog, which had this at like 12:27 a.m. on June 21st, 2020. And based on this event chart, you had the conjunction that involves Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn, and it all fell in the 11th house of groups, clubs, organizations. On the report, it stated that it appeared to be some person shooting at another person, and maybe there was some groups that were involved that may have been involved shooting at each other, but you may want to confirm that. And if that's the case, I could understand how that energy in the 11th house manifested. You're talking about Pluto is the planet connected with death, and you're talking about the 11th house being in a group related situation, even though it was just, the best of my knowledge as of right now, only one person had died, but still it may have been group related. And the fact you have it making the conjunction to Jupiter could exacerbate issues, well, not in this case, not with death, but crime and corruption. And this energy might be related maybe to something where where people are going through some limitation, or it might simply have been very premeditative. Capricorn is about planning and premeditation. And then the last planet in this conjunction, this really what I call stellium, is Saturn in Aquarius retrograde at 0 degrees. And Saturn, of course, makes a very tight in conjunct to the Sun in Cancer at this time. The Saturn in that mix can really reflect, I think, a very this escalation, this crime, and the fact that it's due to maybe some kind of warped responsibility that might be somewhat warped, or maybe it might somewhat bizarre or outlandish. And the thing is, the fact that you have this Saturn in Aquarius at 0 degrees at this time, making a very tight in conjunct aspect to the Sun in Cancer at 0 degrees. In conjunction astrology can be about adjustments, and they can, and I see in conjuncts, are considered neutral, but they can have some conflict in them. I believe you're talking about the Sun in Cancer with that strong focus on introversion and home life, family, safety, and security. And then you have the in conjunct to the Saturn in Aquarius, maybe this responsibility people might still feel to matters with groups, with clubs, their aspirations and goals. And this may have not, and the fact is, this might not have really anything to do much with this shooting. But the point is, when you have Anytime you have, I say, squares or oppositions, and even inconjunct aspects that involve adjustments, there can be a lot of tension in that is more tension that is in the air. These are aspects that are considered non-benign, really non-beneficial, or not. They're not positive. If the in Squares and oppositions are adverse aspects, inconjunct neutral, so it's still not really, it's not considered a full, a benign or beneficial or positive aspect. And when you have the lack of that positive energy, you can really, it can be about some tension. You also have a number of conjunctions in this event chart. When you have a lot of conjunctions, it can be that can also be about friction. And some people may not see or perceive out of sign conjunctions as conjunctions, if that makes sense. If you, in other words, if you have planets that are very close to each other but they're out of sign, some people may not see that as conjunctions. I still see them as conjunctions. You're still getting vibration, you're getting friction energy from those planets. Jupiter's in Capricorn, Saturn is in Aquarius, but they're still conjunct by the aspect. That's how I see it, and some may agree and some may disagree as far as that goes. And you also at this time have Chiron in the first house. No shocker there. And Chiron, of course, being an Aries still, this is about, you're going to see, I think, a lot of continued suffering and wounds through gunfire at this time. There's going to be more issues with law enforcement. You're going to see an escalated volatility with people in law enforcement as well, and sadly maybe police brutality. I know this wasn't involved, I don't think, in this case, but I'm just adding that in there. I'm going off on a little bit of a Gemini moon tangent, people. But anyway, I don't really have much more to say about this at this time, and this is again, this is just a very tragic and terrible shooting. Again, not to be redundant with the word redundant, but I do, my prayers and condolences go out to the victim of the victim's families and close friends of the person that died, and also the people that were injured in this, and they get out of this without perishing. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.